Has anyone ever heard of a pitch slap? Anybody ever heard of this one? Okay. Yeah, I don't know who originally coined this, but it's pretty funny. I know you guys maybe aren't, we're going to talk about LinkedIn a little bit and here in a little bit, so I'm not sure how many people are active on LinkedIn, but even if you think of like Facebook, social media, Instagram, whatever it may be, the society we're living in now is everything's instant gratification. We just want it now, we want it now, we want that sale, we want that sale. So what a pitch slap is like, let's say you get a LinkedIn connection, John or Pam add me on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh, okay, Pam seems pretty nice. She added me on LinkedIn. I accept it, and then immediately 5 minutes later just pitch, hey, can I set up a meeting with you? I want to sell you this and that. And you're like, it just kind of ruins it a little bit because it felt genuine at first, but then you're immediately getting pitched something. So it just immediately puts a guard up on people, and you got to think of your customers, right? So this isn't just us. I mean, Michael, some of y'all can probably tell us from your experience, but depending on their title, logistics, whatever their title is, the higher up the title, the probably more they're going to get. I mean, you talk about email, you talk about LinkedIn, you talk about phone calls, they are just getting hit from every direction possible. So we have to try to put ourselves in their shoes, and for them, they can't tell what's good, they can't tell what's bad, what's different, because it all seems the same. And even if it is something unique and different, they don't have the time to look at that. The email goes to spam. They're scared to get on LinkedIn because they're getting pitched left and right. So it's how do you stand out? I did a poll. I do quite a bit on LinkedIn. I know I'm following with some of you guys. And I asked, do you think this is a good way to get in front of customers and get a meeting? And 90% said no, which I expected that. But a lot of the people that responded were actually potential customers. It was clients. It wasn't salespeople that responded. It was the people that are getting hit with all this. So we have to understand that. We have to try to be empathetic and put ourselves in their shoes. And how would you want to be, treated if you get a sales call, that type of thing. So it's like if you go to a party or an event, hopefully if you just meet somebody, I wouldn't be like, hey, my name's Dustin. I work for Glued. We got the badass sales training company. I'd love to set up a meeting with you next week. How does Wednesday work? Some people might do that, but hopefully you wouldn't. You'd be like, oh, you'd say something about like your shoes, or you'd maybe give them a quick little compliment, like good to see you, what's going on with the family. You got to build it up a little bit, right? So think of when you're prospecting and when we're trying to get new business and upsell accounts, how would you introduce yourself at a party or a conversation?
Location, just kind of rocking on that one.
So you say find their pain points. Obviously, we hear that a lot in sales, right? Find their pain points. A little more specifically, are you talking about their logistics pain points?
Right.
Okay.
The logistics part, the having to do live loads,
Yeah.
2 to 3 trucks, when they have other ones being loaded too with their LTL side of things. So it's just a lot of time, a lot of manpower, and then room in the warehouses. So.
And one thing, and that's great. That's ideal for what your purpose is, right? To find out what their logistic pain points are, so you can offer your solutions, right? One thing I would urge you to start thinking about whenever you're building these relationships, right? Try to find ways to help them. It doesn't always have to be about what your service is about, right? I think that's one of the more powerful things too, is because if you find a way to help them with a problem that you're not going to benefit from right away, whether it be something else in their job, like another issue that they have pop up a lot, but you got a guy that does that. Let's say you talk to them and their accounting department is struggling. I don't know, I'm making something up here, but you know somebody that does that, right? And you refer them to them, you get nothing from that right away, right? But I bet you better believe you do things like that enough and you show them that you have value, real value, and you're there for them to just help. That's where there's power, and that's where they're gonna find ways to give you guys business. And it's about just being a resource.
Right.
And if you box yourself in as just a logistics person, they're going to treat you as just a logistics person. They either need you or they don't. And I found that that's one way to start thinking. It's old school business, right? You just network and that's how you build true relationships. But if you put yourself in a box like that, that's where they're going to too. They're going to put you on a shelf, and when they need you, they'll take you off. And it's just how can you genuinely help them with anything that they may have. Now, getting them to open up about that's a different art, and we'll talk a little bit more about that.
We're so trained to just talk about what we do, which it's good to know that, but how do you want to stand out? How do you want to really showcase what PT's good at, what you're good at individually as a salesperson? So what problem are you solving for them? You guys mentioned a lot of good things here. I wrote them down, but hopefully we can recap these at the end of it. But that ease of mind, that stress, the reliability, the communication, being creative, all the stuff you guys were mentioning. I mean, that's where you're going to make a difference, and they're going to remember you compared to the hundreds of other brokers out there. Like, you have to think that way so that you can stand out and be different. So think more about the problem you solve versus what you do, and that might help get into some of these bigger opportunities that we're going to keep talking about. So from that, it's really, when we started talking about prospecting and getting into these new opportunities, it's all about that know, like, and trust is what we call it. So I'll say KLT, the acronym for it, but that know, like, and trust. If people don't know who you are, they're going to feel threatened. They're going to have a box up right away. So how do you break into that and slowly build up momentum, build up that back and forth? More of a conversation. We don't want us to feel as much pressure about a meeting or you got to do this by this date. It's like, how do we build up that momentum, that rapport with these folks? And we call it know, like, and trust. I think John naturally, as Michael said, the word voodoo, whatever it is from the past, you've probably naturally been doing this your whole career. And a lot of you, I'm sure, have been doing similar type of things. But how do you actually think about it this way of, I need to build up some momentum before I ask for anything. I need to have that giving mentality. It's that jab, 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 right hook. I can't just go in, ask, ask, ask. Let's actually do something for them and have a give before we start asking.
Yeah. I mean, think about it like this. Do you have like people in your life that just call you and they're always wanting something from you?
Yeah.
Right? How do you keep those people? You kind of keep them at arm's distance a little bit, right? It's kind of similar in business, right? If you got a guy who's always calling you, wanting, like trying to sell you, trying to ask, do you really trust them? Like, do you really because, I mean, they're clearly in it for themselves, right? I mean, they're clearly in it to get that commission, which we all want to get that commission. That's not what I'm saying. But you're not going to ever build a true relationship by just constantly calling and asking them for something. It's just not going to happen. You got to show value in other ways. And that's what we're going to dive into here in a little bit. The way you leave voice messages, the way you send emails, the way you show your presence on LinkedIn, things like that. That's how you build it up over time. But that basically, by the time you call them or email them, they're going to see your name and they're going to know who you are. That's what we're trying to do here. But every time you talk to a customer, you interact with a customer, you should. If you're always asking for something from them, that's a problem.
The other thing in sales, and we're going to go deep into focus later, is sometimes we treat all opportunities the same. So you got all that inbound business coming in, you're upselling accounts, you got new opportunities, but it's easy because there's so much going on, it's chaotic, our lives as salespeople, that we treat everything the same. But the reality is there's most likely probably 5 or 6 opportunities that are most likely to succeed for a variety of reasons that you should spend a lot more time on and not treat everything consistently the same. But this is something that we see in every industry we talk to. We struggle with it just like everybody else, but you really have to get relentless with what is that ideal customer profile? What do they look like? What are their tactics? Why would they be successful? What successful deals and customers have we worked with in the past? And rank those. If you can figure out who your ideal customer profile is, never going to be perfect. That's going to help you focus so much more. Because the worst feeling in sales, and this happens to the best of us, is spending all your time running around, jumping through hoops, setting up the meeting, getting the next step, and then you think you're feeling great about it. It's going to close. You're telling internally it's going to close, and then it goes off the rails for whatever reason. And part of that's going to happen no matter what. But part of that could be, you know what, there was a lot of red flags. There was a lot of warning signs early on, but then I still spent the same amount of time on this that I could have on a legit opportunity that was more likely to succeed. So it's definitely an art and a science, but the more you know about who your ideal customer is, the easier that's going to be over time, and you'll start seeing trends that keep happening with good opportunities and bad opportunities. And if you can keep track of that, if you can document it as a team, it's going to really help going into the rest of this year and throughout. So, I mean, a lot of times those tough conversations we have with customers, that's the people that you end up being the closest with. When they had a shit show thing that happened in the past, they were pissed at PT, someone dropped the ball, or whatever the case, and then you help fall on the sword, own up to it, whether it was your fault or not, take care of it, move forward, and then you end up way closer. And maybe they were screaming at you the first time you talked to them. So it's funny how those things work out long term. All right, a little bit more about on the sales process side, then we're going to get into some personal development. I know you guys, some people are probably like, I don't want to hear anything more about sales process. Let's do some other stuff. But the first part of know, like, and trust is something we call the compliment strategy. If you think about it, introducing yourself at a party or wherever it may be, what's something natural you say to people right when you meet them? Like, great looking shoes. Like, looks like you've been working out, man. What's going on? I mean, you kind of joke around a little bit. You break the ice. You give them a compliment. It's just a natural thing to do. So something we use via LinkedIn or email, and we're going to talk about how you can use it in both, is starting off with a give, starting off with a compliment. Sometimes salespeople will do that, but then they ask after the give. But you have to give and then hold for a little bit. Give it a couple days. This is a conversation you're trying to build up. Now, we all live in the instant gratification society, so we want that meeting or we want that conversation now. But if you can just restrain yourself a little bit, have that giving mentality with a compliment, and then build up to a conversation, let's say it takes 10 or 14 days, that's way better than rushing to a no when you could have built up to a yes over a week or two. And that's how we look at it. But you have to start with genuinely being curious about people. Some that's easier than others, and a giving mentality, and we use that with the compliment. Just think about when you get a compliment, whether it's someone liking your Facebook post, someone talking about the what you're wearing, podcast you're on, whatever it may be. But a quote by Mark Twain, I can live for 2 months on a good compliment. So it feels good. It's just a natural human tendency to get a compliment and feel good about it. And it shows that you're actually curious about what they care about, not just about getting a deal and getting commission. And it's the very start of the KLT, that know, like, and trust. It starts with this compliment. All right, so what do I mean by this? So we can use this via LinkedIn. So instead of doing that pitch slap that we talked about earlier, going straight to asking for something, you start with just a very general overall compliment. These can be very general, or they can be strategic if it's someone that you're focused on a little more in depth. But you got to start somewhere. LinkedIn's great for this, but also email. You can do it on email, and I'll show you guys different ways to do this as we progress throughout today. But let me get over here so I can see this. So here's some general ones I do. I obviously use LinkedIn quite a bit, so I'm going to show you these here. Christy, always hear great things about Synaptic Tech. Congrats on all your success. Kept it very general and basic. Now, on LinkedIn, even if they accept if they don't say anything back, like they could say thanks or appreciate it, even if they just accept your request, that's a win because you're building up that know, like, and trust. They know who you are. I post a lot on LinkedIn, so someone liked it. I'll look at people that like my post. I said, thanks for the like on my recent post about sales. All right. We did a leadership forum or some podcast thing. It was called the Sales Leadership Forum. I said, Karina, thanks for joining the Sales Leadership Forum yesterday. I used to be in nurse staffing. She was in nurse staffing. Congrats on all the success. Always hear great things about CST. Congrats on your team success because I was a leader. So you can get the point here. You got to have that giving mentality, and then you don't pounce right away. You wait for a little bit. And email and or LinkedIn can be used for this.
Be a human, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty much.
That's a good point too.
basic.
Now, if it's higher up folks, or maybe a really strategic top of the list of that dormant accounts that you want to get into, maybe you put a little bit more thought into it and curate it even more. So this lady over here, she's a CEO of a tech company. She had a post about how the founders and the leaders need to get back in the field sometimes and sell as well and not just leave it to their team. So I thought that was cool. So I said that, and then she said, amen to that, thank you. All right. This guy here, met him at a conference, so you can also take real life into the digital world. Met him at a conference. Nice meeting you at SOAR. Congrats on all the success at your company. All right. We obviously have a good relationship with Brian Burns. We play that to our strengths, so I'll connect with other people that are connected with Brian, and I'll say, always enjoy connecting with other Brian Burns fans. And that's an instant, like, we have something in common, right? This guy had this whole big post about Savannah and a great experience that he had there. I happened to be there, I think, somewhat recently, and just commented on his post. So those are more strategic, a little more thought into it. They can be more general too, but if you just get in the habit of complimenting your potential customers, it's going to go over pretty well. And I mean, for that matter, being a human in life, if you start practicing this with your family, your friends, coworkers, you get in the habit of just doing it in the real world too, you'll be shocked at how it can change some of your conversations. But the key is you have to hold yourself and restrain from asking right away. So you got to give, and then eventually build it up into an ask.